In Arkansas, 64.2% voted for Trump. Today, their silos are full. Their bank accounts are empty. This situation reveals a striking paradox that deserves thorough analysis, as the consequences go far beyond the simple economic framework and fundamentally question the nature of electoral responsibility in democracy. Understanding this crisis requires examining three crucial dimensions: the unfulfilled campaign promises, the reality of international trade exchanges, and the moral dilemma that this situation now poses for American society as a whole. Trump's campaign promises directed at farmers were based on several attractive but contradictory pillars with his other campaign commitments. First, he promised to open new international markets to allow American farmers to export more of their production abroad. Simultaneously, he committed to imposing massive tariffs on Chinese imports and on many other countries, an economic policy incompatible with the commercial openness promised to farmers. This fundamental contradiction was nevertheless visible from the electoral campaign, as Trump had already applied exactly the same strategy during his first term, between 2017 and 2021. The trade war with China had already caused a dramatic drop in American agricultural exports, forcing the administration to pay billions of dollars in compensation to farmers to offset their losses. Agricultural sector professionals knew these precedents perfectly, and knew that Trump would inevitably repeat the same policies during his second term. Despite this knowledge, the majority of them chose to vote for him again, hoping this time to benefit from sufficient advantages to compensate for the announced commercial losses. These hoped-for advantages included tax cuts particularly attractive for this population, because contrary to popular belief, most American farmers today are millionaires thanks to the value of their land and equipment. The progressive concentration of the agricultural sector over several decades has eliminated the smallest farms and only leaves subsisting agricultural enterprises with considerable capital. This economic reality explains farmers' marked interest in tax policies favorable to large estates, an aspect often overlooked in traditional political analyses. Trump also promised a relaxation of environmental regulations and worker protection standards, particularly concerning immigrant employees under H-2A visas. The Trump administration had already facilitated the exploitation of these immigrant workers by reducing controls on their working conditions and allowing employers to maintain them in a state close to servitude. These measures represented substantial savings for large agricultural operations that massively employ this vulnerable workforce. Finally, farmers hope to receive direct financial compensation from the federal government again, as had been the case during Trump's first term. These emergency subsidies had represented several tens of billions of dollars distributed to compensate for losses due to tariffs and Chinese commercial retaliation. This community allows us to maintain an editorial line free from the usual economic and political pressures. The economic reality now hitting American farmers goes far beyond what they had anticipated, even in their most pessimistic scenarios. The tariffs imposed by Trump have provoked immediate retaliation from the main commercial partners of the United States. China and Mexico, which represented the biggest buyers of American agricultural products, have drastically reduced their imports and are now turning to other suppliers. Brazilian soybeans become, for example, more competitive than American soybeans on the Chinese market because of tariffs, creating a lasting advantage for South American competitors. This supplier substitution is not limited to a temporary drop in sales. It durably restructures global supply chains to the detriment of American producers. Farmers discover that they cannot pass these additional costs on to their selling prices, because world prices of agricultural commodities are imposed on them. Unlike manufacturing companies that can adjust their prices to compensate for tariffs, agricultural producers suffer a compression of their profit margins without possibility of adjustment. This situation creates a vicious circle where their production costs increase because of tariffs on agricultural equipment and raw materials, while their revenues decrease because of the loss of export markets. In Arkansas, farmers testified in never having known such a dramatic situation in several decades of career. Some declare owning for the first time stocks of unsaleable crops in their silos, an unprecedented situation that endangers the survival of their farms. The most optimistic still hope to receive government compensation, but this aid is slow to come and might never arrive. The fundamental difference with Trump's first term lies in the fact that he no longer needs to court voters for his re-election. Constitutionally limited to 2 terms, Trump can now apply his policies without worrying about electoral consequences, which radically changes the political equation. Farmers discover that they were more adjustment variables than true political priorities for the Republican administration. This revelation raises deep questions about the nature of political representation and about voters' responsibility in the consequences of their choices. The moral dilemma posed by this situation deeply divides American public opinion and reveals theological tensions that cross society. On one side, these farmers in difficulty remain American citizens who contribute to the national economy and potentially deserve collective solidarity. On the other side, they consciously voted for policies whose predictable consequences they knew and now seem to want to escape the results of their choices. This situation questions the limits of political compassion in a democracy where each vote engages the responsibility of the one who expresses it. Some observers believe that these voters must fully assume the consequences of their decisions, in accordance with the democratic principle of electoral responsibility. This approach considers that democracy can only function properly if citizens bear the weight of their political choices, even when they prove disastrous. Others emphasize that human compassion must prevail over political considerations, and that the state must rescue all citizens in difficulty regardless of their opinions. This position highlights national unity and refuses to condition public solidarity on the political orientations of beneficiaries. Between these 2 positions, a third way emerges that conditions public aid on explicit recognition of committed errors and a change in political attitude. This pedagogical approach aims to make beneficiaries responsible while offering them an opportunity for democratic redemption. The electoral repercussions of this crisis could durably transform the American political landscape, particularly in traditionally Republican rural states. If 1/3 of agricultural operations were to disappear, as some projections suggest, this could create a major sociological upheaval in these regions. Rural voters could either further radicalize their positions by seeking scapegoats or conversely reconsider their traditional political alliances. This evolution will largely depend on the capacity of political leaders to propose credible alternatives and on the Trump administration's reaction to this crisis. The absence of government compensation could definitively break the trust between Trump and his agricultural electoral base. Conversely, last-minute emergency measures could maintain this alliance despite current difficulties. This uncertainty places the midterm elections as a crucial test to measure the evolution of opinion in these rural constituencies. Democrats could seize this opportunity to reconquer lost territories by proposing more pragmatic agricultural policies. But they will also have to overcome the deep cultural resistances that traditionally separate them from the American rural electorate. This crisis finally reveals the fundamental contradictions of Trumpian populism that simultaneously promises commercial isolationism and export prosperity. It also illustrates the limits of representative democracy when voters choose policies contrary to their material interests. The outcome of this situation will probably condition the future of the MAGA movement and its capacity to maintain its electoral coalition faced with economic realities.
If this analysis interests you and you want more breakdowns of current events, don't hesitate to subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell. Your support gives us the strength necessary to continue analyzing these complex subjects with the independence they deserve.